So being that it was filmed in Canada, was the tryouts in Canada or was the tryouts still here?
Yeah, the tryouts were both. I think the Australian team, the tryouts were in Sydney, so we had people flying from all over the country to try out here. And in Canada, it was the same scenario. They had a tryouts in, maybe they had East and West Coast, I'm not sure, but they had the tryouts over there. And once they'd got the cast together, we were kind of, assembled, flown out to Canada where we do the filming in Montreal, Quebec, or it was a town outside of Montreal in the countryside. It was like a big log cabin. It was snowing. It was the full, Canadian ideal kind of setting outdoors. So it was really, really cool and unique experience. But again, imagine 8 weeks, no phone, no TV, no communication with family. You don't know these bunch of 7 other smelly dudes you're living with, and you're fighting the other team, and you train about 3 hours a day. Your coaches are hammering you, and it was all quite overwhelming. I enjoyed it, and I kind of got behind it, but I could see how some people would go nuts and not enjoy that kind of situation.
And is it an invitational kind of tryout, or is it something that you apply for? Because with some of these reality TV shows, it's like we're film. I don't even know, like American Ninja or Australian Ninja. We've got our own series now, and they say, we're filming this. Send your demo tapes in or whatever. Or is it that the UFC actively look at what's going on in the regional scene and they send you an invite rather than how does that all work?
That one was definitely a tryout type scenario, but you had to have at least 3 professional fights. You had to have a video reel. You had to be accepted to come to the tryouts. There was some sort of criteria, if I do recall, for actually trying, for coming to the selections and kind of going through the process or the rigors. If I can recall, it was, there was a grappling component to it where they kind of matched us up with somebody for a 3-minute grappling round. They wanted to look at your skills there. There was a pad holding section where they watched you kick and watch you, hit mitts. And then there was some interviews. So it wasn't solely based on skills or record. It was a combination of skills, technically, your record in MMA, and also, I guess, how you interviewed and what you were kind of going to bring to the show. Obviously they're still going to make TV. So it was an interesting experience. I still remember the tryouts was, you got there and it was the who's who of Australian MMA, big dudes, ugly ears, intimidating.
Well, you had Dan Kelly on your series, right?
I had Dan Kelly.
And I think Jake Matthews as well, right?
Yeah, Jake Matthews, Daniel Kelly, to name a few. And, I didn't know either of them well before the series, but afterwards we were very, very good mates. So you imagine if you're in a house, obviously, with 8 weeks with a group of guys, you're going to know them pretty well by the end of it. So we've continued that friendship, especially with those 2 guys and Brendan O'Reilly, till now, and we still talk regularly. But yes, they were at the tryouts. I think at the time Daniel was 36 or 37 when he was first in the UFC. So he may have been 36 at the tryouts. You imagine he's already done 3 Olympics and decided he wanted to try his hand at MMA and continue that till he was 40. It was a pretty late start for him. Jake at the time was maybe 20. So he was one of the youngest to make the UFC roster when he did it, 20 or 21. So yeah, it was crazy experience, and some good friendships were forged and still remain to this day.
And I guess, was it hard to be in that sort of, I'll compare it to the Winter Warrior experience, right? Mm. Where I always say, which is tougher, not knowing anything about your opponent, or being, in your case, for us it was just we were training together, but for you were actually trapped in the same house. Mm. Which do you find harder? And I only say that because, like, for my sort of series, like, I was like, damn, like, it's hard. It's kind of good because over the time you can kind of like eye out, they're good at this. I could maybe get them here. I could do this. Sure. But on the other token is you start to form friendships, right? Yeah. And then suddenly you might be paired off against each other, and it's like, because you hear about, like, when you see what happened with, was it Rashad Evans and John Jones, right? Yeah. In a camp, all of a sudden they both want the title, and it just totally destroyed that kind of relationship.
Absolutely. I think I didn't have either of those problems because I didn't get to see the Canadians train, so I couldn't kind of ascertain how or who I was fighting and what their skill set was like. The second was we didn't actually become too close to the Canadians friendship-wise, so I didn't have those 2 problems. But the problem that I did have was, yes, I was in the house with them the whole time. there's the unknown of how good they are, how they've been training, and you're seeing that person you're fighting every day. And I know you would have felt the same. It's a little bit, uncomfortable for me, especially. I would rather almost not watch their tapes, not know who I'm fighting that well, and just go fight. The sitting around and the seeing the opponent and the whole hoorah that goes with fighting was something that I didn't necessarily enjoy. I actually enjoy, the competition side of it and being in there in that moment, that kind of flow state, that fight or flight, those nerves and that accomplishment that you feel after you fight. The whole lead up to it and the everything that's involved with it, to me is actually a bit sickening. So that's why it's kind of nice to now be coaching and take my experience from that and pass it on to other people rather than being in there in the center of the limelight myself, because the pressure that I felt from myself was enough to take years off my life. Certainly lost my hair.
And talking about the coaching side of things, like how did you enjoy the difference there? Because I assume when you weren't on the TUF, I'm sure you had other fighters come out of your camp or whatever. But usually when you have a fight lined up, the attention is on you for whatever it is, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Where something like TUF, I mean, how did that all change? Because obviously, how many were on Team Australia?
There was four welterweights, 4 middleweights, so there's 8 total.
Right, and how many coaches?
There would have been 3. We had 3 coaches.
So do you feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Did I get enough attention? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not so much the attention, because I'm not saying like you're an attention seeker, but like just having that, where.
You're not the only one fighting.
It is kind of like the attention, right? So like we're going to find sparring partners for you specifically. This, and get you ready for your fight. Where all of a sudden you're in a household where now everyone's getting ready, everyone's got to fight, and the coach's time, I guess, is very limited to what they can actually give you.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the Ultimate Fighter was ideal for anybody, because you kind of you're subject to your coaches that you have and their idea of a training camp with 8 randoms and how they can make you win. So there wasn't so much research into, Rich, what was your training camp before you came on the Ultimate Fighter? Did they watch all my videos? Did they know my style? Do they know me? Do they know how I fight? Do they know what I need? Do they know your personal needs, your psychological needs, etc.? I don't think you have that home advantage in terms of your own coach being there in your corner and that attention that you probably need. So yeah, I definitely think that was testing. I thought that we trained too much. The emphasis was on training hard, and I don't know if it was for the camera, it was for people just want to train hard, but the training was too hard, in my opinion. It was 8 weeks of getting the guts flogged out of us, no periodization, no taper, and you could fight at any moment. There should have been a conversation. If I was coaching the Ultimate Fighter or anything, it would be, okay, Dennis, you've come here. What was your training before? Are you fit? Are you in shape? Are you ready to go? Are you carrying an injury? What would you like to do? We have 8 weeks here. Would you like to focus on striking? Would you like to do a little bit on your own? How do you like to prepare for a camp? How do you like to cut weight, etc.? So I think there was not many of those questions being thrown around, and I think that would have been more beneficial if everybody, especially coaching, knew exactly what each individual needed. That was probably the biggest concern for me. By the time I got out of the Ultimate Fighter, I was absolutely wrecked. My body was just in a total limp mode. It was injuries, sore, everything.
And for that, do you try to stay on weight the whole time, or are you going up and down?
In the Ultimate Fighter or outside?
In the Ultimate Fighter.
In the Ultimate Fighter, I never had a problem with my weight. I was always pretty close to welterweight anyway. I only cut 4 to 5 kilos. I was never a big welterweight in terms of weight. So I didn't have the issue of yo-yoing up and down in weight. I always stayed consistent. So for me, if anything, it was being too light was an issue. And I know for other people, not knowing when you're going to fight within an 8-week period is a little bit concerning, especially if you are big and you just get notice on, 3 or 4 days that, hey, you're fighting, and you have to make weight. But for me, that wasn't an issue. So if anything, it was keeping that weight up so I could train properly, because we just did so much volume of training then that we were all losing weight.
And I have to ask, like, you know, what they always say, and people always come out with reality TV, you know, afterwards. Oh, they painted me in this way, or they painted me in that way. How much of the Ultimate Fighter, I guess, is what you see, and how much of it do you feel like was set for production? Like, were there ever any moments where the production crew would come and go, "Listen, we need to film X, or we need to film Z," or were they more just flies on the wall?
And more flies on the wall in terms of the Ultimate Fighter. I feel like in other reality TV shows, they make the drama, and that's what sells it. Maybe in the UFC, I think initially in the Ultimate Fighters, there was definitely some more action. The ones that I remember watching when when I first was introduced to martial arts were a little bit more exciting, I think, than maybe ours. Like, I feel like the Canadians and Australians were so amicable and everybody was friends. I was like, oh, this is a little bit boring. Somebody needs to fight each other in the house or something.
Well, I think it's because both of our cultures, I mean, Canadians are really good, cool
Correct.
people, right? And we're kind of like laid back as well. So I think, did they have alcohol in the house?
Yeah, they had alcohol, but again, like, we just had a lot of, there was one bloke from our team, Tyler, that definitely, had a few drinks. But besides that, there wasn't that many guys who were crazy. I think if they wanted to cast it and not pick the best fighters, definitely you could get a bit of that. You could, if I was casting it, I'd probably pick a couple of loose cannons and put them in there just for, comedic value or, some drama. But we actually probably had, a real good mix of people. And one of the Canadians ended up being my main training partner for the majority of my UFC fights. So I'd say we got along better than anybody planned.